Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the Evangelical Environmental Network as we present our second annual Flourishing Future Film Festival, where this year we're so happy to present Virginia's Calling. This evening, we're going to have an evening of sharing a film together, having a discussion with Virginia and Barry and Linda, and we're going to get a chance to discuss in breakout groups for a brief little bit of time. What are some of the key takeaways that we can hear and learn from Virginia's story? Before that, though, I want to introduce myself, Marcus Cole, the Director of Engagement and Church Outreach here at EEN. And in a few short minutes, I'll be introducing a few of the other folks here that are joining us live tonight. But I did just want to run our agenda really quickly, give you a few housekeeping rules, open us in a word of prayer, and then we'll get started. First and foremost, as I said, we're going to start the screening shortly, and then that screening is going to be followed by a live question and response panel with Virginia and Barry and Linda. And after that, we'll transition to our breakout groups, and at the end of the evening, some next steps that we can all take to keep on going. And with that in mind, there are going to be parts of the evening where we invite you to not just come off of mute, but to share directly with us, either in the chat box or in your breakout group. So that will be an opportunity tonight. But as we move through the screening and during the question and response period, I do ask that you keep your audio on mute at the beginning. Part of that is because this program is actually being recorded, so those later can watch it if they weren't able to attend tonight. Or if you decide to screen this film yourself later on, you'll have that live question and response section that you can hear directly from Virginia. So we do just ask that you stay on mute, that you use the chat for the first portion of the evening. We also suggest while this movie is being screened, that you consider putting your video on mute. That might help with watching the video together for some of you, depending on how you're connecting with us this evening. So we wanted to put that out there. And then finally, it might be worthwhile to consider putting your view in speaker mode and then pinning whoever might be the speaker there, just again, to keep you from having to bounce between too many screens. So with that, I'm going to open in a quick word of prayer, and then we'll get into introductions and start our evening. Creator God, we just come to you thanking you for your creation. Your scripture says that all of creation is yours, and in fact, all of creation glorifies you. So we just join our voice in the chorus this evening, Lord, of those that are created, glorifying the Creator. We ask that you use this time to open eyes, open ears, and change hearts, Lord, and even continue some of us down a path of advocacy and loving our neighbors well, Lord. We ask this, and we ask that you be with us this evening. Amen. So with that, I want to introduce you all to a few friends just really quickly, and I'm going to invite Barry, Linda, and Virginia to come off mute. And Barry, maybe you can introduce yourself, who you are, your connection to the film, and where you're checking in from, and then we'll go to Linda.
Thank you so much, Marcus. It's really a delight to be here, and thank you to all of you who are joining us tonight. I'm joining you from Ecuador, South America, where I'm actually teaching this semester. I am the, I guess several roles, producer, director, anyway, the leader in making the film. And we're just, again, delighted to be able to present the film to you tonight and to be then talking about it with you. Linda, I guess, is gonna introduce yourself next.
Yes, thank you, Barry. Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Neiman, and I am just extremely pleased to be here tonight. My role in the film has been as director, co-director, and co-producer of the film. And of course, we're continuing with a great deal of follow-up activities after having completed the film. Now we're sharing it with everyone, and we're delighted that EEN has selected our film as the feature film for this year's Flourishing Future from Film Festival. So we thank EEN, and we're delighted to see so many of you here tonight. We're looking forward to having some great discussions and some ongoing contact with many of you as well. With that, I guess I will just say that making this film with Barry has been one of the greatest joys of my life. And it has been an absolute joy and a pleasure to have had the trust of Virginia to translate her story into the medium of film. And so with that, I would like to introduce you to Virginia, who is the lady who has the real story to tell. This is her testimony, and we hope that you will find it. We know that you will find it very inspiring. Virginia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Virginia, and my role in the film is, I guess I'm the subject matter, is what you would say. I'm really happy to be on this call with all of you tonight, and to share my story with you, and to actually listen to your stories as well, and to interact with you on this personal level, and hearing what's going on in your communities, and you know, working together with you, encouraging you all in your faith, encouraging you all in your calling in your life. And I'm just really excited to be here. And I'm really glad that each and every one of you have tuned in here tonight. And thank you, Marcus and Lindsay, for hosting this and for having it, and for having myself and Barry and Linda here. It has been quite the journey in participating in this documentary, and had some emotional moments here and there, because it's life, it's real, it's my real life, and I'm happy to share it with you all. And I hope that it brings you closer to your calling as well in your life.
Well, thank you for that, Virginia. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Linda. And for those of you that were joining us live, you saw the video and just this question of what's worth defending. Over 80 of you registered tonight to be a part of this, and we're so happy to have you here as we watch Virginia's calling. All right. We live in a world that floods. I love that Virginia's father-in-law had that comment there. We're going to prepare to move to our live panel with Barry and Linda and Virginia. And as we make that transition, I want to invite you to put your questions in the chat box, and maybe start by just putting in the chat what resonated with you most from Virginia's story. What resonated with you most? And so as they're doing that, and I prepare to turn to our panelists, maybe I'll start with Barry and Linda. What drew you to Virginia's story? As we wait for those questions to populate and start asking to Virginia. Barry, Linda, what drew you to Virginia's story?
There's so much in Virginia's story that moved me and inspired me. She's a model of someone who has had to think deeply about what God is calling on her to do. And she's had a lot of courage to struggle with that question, and then to seek that path and learn all sorts of things that she didn't start out knowing. I mean, she didn't start out knowing anything about flooding infrastructure or the science of climate, but she started out with the sense that her central calling is to love her neighbors. And that led her to this path where she's had struggles and setbacks and challenges, but also tremendous success in mobilizing her community. And so we just wanted to present that model of engagement with these issues out of deep personal faith and love of her neighbors.
Yeah, I love that, Barry. Thanks so much. And I see some stuff coming in. Karen said environmental care is not, parenthetically, should not be political. I love Rebecca has down here, but it was really wonderful seeing how you were strengthened to become a person who led change in the community. Maybe Linda, if you'd love to respond, and then I'm going to turn to Virginia and ask some questions about that story. So Linda, yeah, what drew you to Virginia's story? And you can come off of mute to share that.
It was Barry who first met Virginia and heard her story and shared it with me. And of course, we got excited and I was eager to meet her. And Virginia is just larger than life. I'm just, I was so impressed with her. And through this several years journey that the three of us have taken together, we've just been able to learn so much from Virginia and be so inspired by, not just her story, but her ongoing faith and the fact that love is at the heart. It's at the root of everything Virginia does. And she's a very special person for who she is and how she approaches life.
Yeah, thanks for that, Linda. And Virginia, I'm going to invite you off of mute. I see a couple of comments in here. Both Keith and Susan hit at the same point about your faith. And I had a similar thought. There's this part of the movie where you're sitting with your Bible, Virginia, essentially deconstructing your faith while you're reconstructing your home. And it's such a beautiful image there. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about that connection in that season after the storm, but before the advocacy.
Right. Yes. So that was a big part of all of this. It was a time of where I talked about I got angry with God because I had being prior to the flood about having faith as a seed, and then I believed in my heart that my house wasn't going to flood. Really thought, hey, I've got the faith. God's not going to let this happen. And then it happened. And so it was this, I went into this stage of just anger about that, and really got low, as the film talks about, again, this low point. I like the connection you just made, that as I was rebuilding my home, I was reconstructing my faith, which is just it's so true. It's so true. And that I was learning that that my identity at the time prior to the flood was in the things that surrounded me, but God was teaching me that my identity was in Him, and it didn't matter where I was or where I was living, or if I had a home or a rental home or a flooded home or a dry home. It really didn't matter. But I needed to identify who I was as a human being and as a spiritual being, and have that identity in Him and not in the things that are around me. And I think that is kind of what propelled me to reach out into my community after I got back into the house. It got me through the construction of the home. Those moments of, we might not make it, financially like this. We might have to declare bankruptcy. I had a total reliance on the Lord at every single moment. I had to know, I just had to rely on Him for where my family was going to live, how I was going to feed my family. If I was going to get the next $350 that the contractor needed, or $3,000 that they needed, or if the insurance company was going to give it, or if we were going to get the loan or anything like that. And so it was just a complete reliance on God. And so it was this, I had to recognize that not only was my faith weak at that point, but it wasn't so much that it was weak, it was just I needed God, and I needed God to walk me through all of that.
Yeah, it reminds me so often in scripture, whether it's Noah and the ark or Moses or the people or even Psalms, there's this idea of passing through waters, these chaos waters, and coming out the other side renewed. And I love, Virginia, in the story, there's this conversation where Barry and Linda do this masterful cut between you and your brother. And he talks about this idea of the test. You mentioned in the movie about renewal. And before we turn to the policy and advocacy, I just wanted to, what was that renewal like on the other side of those waters?
It was probably the sweetest thing that's ever happened to me. In seeing that I did have that renewal of that God loves me and that he cares for me. Even when I'm in the midst of a disaster, he loves me. And it kind of renewed this sense of his protection in my life. Not only does he love me, but he protects me, and he's going to take care of me. And it was like I was like a baby being held by its parent. You know, my Father God was holding me and carrying me through, and it was just this sense of peace. And you know, the Bible talks about having a peace that passes understanding, and it did. It passed all my understanding, because I was a mess. I was a wreck, and then I wasn't.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
No, that's really good. And these questions, thanks. Keep putting the questions in the chat box. I want to turn back to Barry and Linda really quickly, because there's some good questions in here about the community coming alongside. And Barry and Linda, I noticed in the film that you did have, whether they're local politicians or friends, there were text messages as part of that. Talk to us a little bit about why it was important for you to have part of the film be about folks coming alongside Virginia in this advocacy work.
Well, I think that's an important part of Virginia's story, is that, you know, she achieved so much over a long period of time and through a lot of ups and downs and a great deal of effort. But there were people along the way who appeared at the right times and provided her with the right kinds of information and understandings, and really served as guides that enabled her. And she's a real self-starter. I mean, Virginia doesn't sit around and wait for somebody to tell her what to do or how to do it. She takes on anything that she decides to take on. But she did have some wonderful mentors who made this a collective effort. And you know, I think one of the strengths that she gained from the whole experience was that, you know, she had her family, she had the people at the Civic League with the man in the red sweater, you know, and she had she just gathered these people from mainly through mostly through herself, her Facebook study, her Facebook page, and the meetings, the public meetings that she organized and held and set up, managed all by herself, brought in the right people to speak. And this just enabled her in ways that she probably wouldn't have thought of all of those things on her own.
That's good, Linda. And I see Keith here put about, you don't have to be an expert to get involved, just a story that matters, and Wynn down here about needing others, joining with others. And Barry, I want to invite you as a storyteller. Tell us a little bit about why that part of the story needed to be in the film, and then I'll turn back to Virginia with some more questions.
Yeah, I think, I mean, part of the story is Virginia, as I said before, learning a new way of loving her neighbors. And that was above all through working with her neighbors who were suffering from flooding and who were worried about it and who wanted to understand it. And so she found her a way to pursue that calling in her local community. And the other part of that I want to add to what Linda already said is that it involved engaging with people, certainly with people who shared her faith. And I know she's talked about this already. That's essential in her support and in her being able to sustain her activism. I mean, her attitude of approaching people as people to be loved. That's her calling. That's essential when she faced setbacks, when people didn't listen, or when she had to or decided to go testify in Richmond in the state assembly for legislation, that kind of thing. But it also so her faith is central to this, but it also involved working with people of all different sorts of political persuasions, all different sorts of beliefs. And again, the sense that her central calling is to love people is vital to her ability to be graceful with other people who don't necessarily share all her views, or who might be against some of the things that she's advocating for.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Barry. And Virginia, I want to invite you back off of mute, because it's all well and good to love others. That doesn't mean they're going to love us back. And your brother mentioned it in the video about folks wanting you to be quiet. Barry alluded to setbacks and folks not listening. And I think David Larabi here in the chat box, and several others with David, asked a question that kind of sums this up. How has your journey impacted your life in the church community? You mentioned in the film that earlier for you, it was like this was just another political angle, this climate change thing. But now you're obviously doing some of this advocacy. How has that impacted your church life and your faith community?
Well, at the time, my church community really came around me, and they really began to go through the journey with me, and see what I was seeing. They were very open to seeing what I was seeing and very open to hearing what I had to say about it. My friend in the film, Teresa Smith, she was at the time we were attending a congregation together, and it just it was interesting to me that I learned the church really was more than just four walls, so to speak. The church was a people with, there was more to what I could do in my faith and sharing my faith outside of those four walls and in my community. And really I had the backing of my church community in that, and the support of my faith community to go out there, to love on my neighbors, to learn the politics, to try to figure out how to wage through all of that. And even I'm in a different church now, and I'm actually getting ready to move back to North Carolina. But so it's just this continuing evolving situation for me in my faith community, and talking with different people throughout my faith community about climate change, about what is happening in our environment, and they're pretty receptive to it,
Give us I'm gonna re-ask the question, and then we'll just go from there for later on. So Virginia, we were talking about that transition and how people responded to starting to talk about climate change and that response. And you talked about there being support in your community and how important that was. And we were starting to make that transition to talking about the science and why the science is important. And so, Virginia, I do just want to invite you to talk about what it meant to you when you started to understand some of that science and why that was an important part of your story as well.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I was a little confused. There was somebody else on there with my name. But yes, just the science for me was important, because I I had to learn why, why I wanted to learn why it was that my house flooded, and being able to talk to someone who understood this, not just an engineer, but who understood the science behind it. Because I had a lot of engineers from the city that wanted to talk to me, but they were engineers, and so they have kind of a different way of speaking. And Dr. Covey really had a great way of just, explaining things to me in a way that I could understand. And then I could take the things that she said and I could, kind of change them around a little bit more to educate other people in my community. And that's where it starts. I believe that's where it starts, is to understand why, you have this, significant thing going on in your community. Like in our community is flooding, and people want to know why does it flood? And it's not so much just, although some people might want to just say, oh, it's just because the city didn't do this or they didn't do that. But it's great. It's deeper. There's more to it. Like he says in the film, Dr. Covey says it's not just one of these things, it's a combination of these things as to why we fled. And understanding the science is what brought me to the realization that climate change was real. I opened my mind up to learning and to understanding. And in doing that, I began to see more of the whole picture of what was happening. And I mean, even going, it's just amazing to me to know, you've got your currents out in the Atlantic Ocean, different currents, and those currents, affect, what happens in the Chesapeake Bay here around where I live. And then what's going on in the Chesapeake Bay comes into the streams and the rivers that are surrounding Virginia Beach. And then those streams and those rivers, that gets into our infrastructure, and that infrastructure is what backed up and flooded my home. So it's this broad scale idea of what's happening in the world, and then how it comes right back into it. What's going on in the whole world affects my backyard. And it's hard for somebody to really grasp that, by having that. And understanding that and examining that science is where it starts, and it helps create an understanding, in my opinion.
Oh, Virginia, I love that the science helps create understanding. Barry and Linda, I wonder though, as storytellers and filmmakers, science isn't the easiest thing to capture visually. So maybe walk us through why it was important to have that science be a part of the film and how you navigated. As Virginia so eloquently put, the science is the start of the understanding. How did you capture that as storytellers?
Well, we made a choice actually not to center the science, because we didn't want this to be another climate change film that that is just explaining things and taking people through the nuts and bolts. But we at the same time thought it was important to show some of it, because if you only have a heart for knowing what you want or what's important in life, or for loving your neighbors, but you don't know how to do it, you don't know what's hurting, you don't understand what's hurting your neighbors, then it's like trying to walk with one leg. So we wanted to show that part of Virginia's story was understanding the how and the why and all the mechanics of that, but within that broader story, that broader narrative of how her heart changed, how she became open to understand, to listening to the science, how she found this calling to address flooding issues, and that was the driver. So it's two hands clapping or two legs walking. We need both.
Yeah, Linda, go ahead. Yeah, a little bit about that science and how you decided to capture that and put that as part of the story there.
Well, it was a real challenge for us when we were working on that part of the film, because we had so much good material from Michelle Covey, and we had to cut that down so much. But we decided to just let her say a little bit about the science, and to focus more on what Virginia was doing with that room full of people who did come to listen to Michelle talk. But Michelle has a way of teaching science that is not intimidating, and that is really accessible to anyone. And most of us are not trained in science. I certainly am not. I don't have a good background in science. And when I came onto this project, I had a lot of concerns about environmental issues and about climate change, but I didn't really know much of the science. And it's something that I kind of absorbed as I went along. But I think, as Virginia said, that learning and that knowledge needs to come from your own need to know, your need to understand. When you recognize a problem, whether it's a problem that's affecting you and your community, or whether it's a problem that's affecting somebody someplace on the other side of the world and their community, that's when you realize you need to understand a little bit of the science of it. And it doesn't mean you have to get a PhD in science. It just means that you need to know a little bit. But we really were very, Barry and I were very committed to the idea of keeping science around the edges of the film, because this is Virginia's story. It's not a science film. It's not an environmental film. It's Virginia's testimony of faith, and science is a piece of that. And she speaks eloquently about how she developed that knowledge and understanding. But it was not important. It was not important enough that we wanted to have lots of details about science and charts and graphs. And we actually made a few, and then we decided to throw them out. Barry did some great ones. I mean, they're beautiful, but in the end we said, no, it's just too much science for our audience. We want to focus on Virginia's story and her story of faith. And we're happy that we came to those conclusions.
That's so good, Linda. And I love that's why we do the live panels, right? Because that's the insider stuff you wouldn't get just from watching the film. And it kind of brings me back to another question I want to ask you, Virginia, a couple more. Just for purposes of our agenda tonight, we are going to make a slight edit. We were going to move to a breakout room where we had some questions to kind of channel some more of this. But due to the time, what we're going to do is just really be thankful that we have Virginia and Barry and Linda live and use this time well to continue to learn from them. And then I'll move us towards a close in about 10 minutes. Virginia, there's this, we talked about science, we talked about understanding, but maybe one of the things you understood intuitively, or at least you talked about it with your Facebook group in the film, was the power of images and visuals, right? Where I love there's this scene where you're on the street and you say, no, this isn't a river, it's my street. So maybe, Virginia, if you can share a little bit with us about why you believe that sharing pictures and videos is so important for folks, and then kind of what are some of the themes you've seen in your town that's really stirred you and some of your neighbors to action?
Well, sharing pictures and video is important because it's reality. And sharing it from my standpoint, not, a newspaper or a news channel, but me. I went through it. I've got my phone. I'm showing you exactly what's going on, and it's unedited. And all of my Facebook Live videos, every single one of them, you see the real me. I make a mistake, you know, and what I'm saying in just about every single one of them. And I actually have fun with it, you know, because it's kind of laughable, and that, you know, it shows people I'm just a regular gal. I'm just a real person who went through a real experience. I'm not out here trying to make a movie, even though I'm in a movie. I wasn't trying to make a movie. I was just trying to get people to see what was real. It really something sparked in me, as was captured in the film, and that this employee of the city was saying, oh, well, we don't really know where it floods. And I'm looking around at the largest city in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I'm going, why don't you know where it floods? You know, can't you put up a camera? You know, I mean, all these things go through your brain, you know, you're just like, can't you figure it out? And it just sparked in me and said, okay, well, you don't know where it floods. I'm going to show you where it floods. I'm going to flood you with information so that you can know what it is that we really go through. And that just kind of rolled into this whole thing where I had people, you know, sending their videos, sending their pictures, and they're wanting to share. They want people to see what is happening in their backyards. And, you know, some of them, they're angry about it, you know, and so I'm just like, okay, let's share it. Let's not share it angrily. But, you know, if you're angry about it, okay, we'll share it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to get that information out there. And it makes a world of difference. It really does. It just, you know, taking down that wall that some of us have where we go, oh, I don't want to be on camera. I've just, you know, resigned myself to, I'm going to be on camera. I'm going to show the world what's going on here, because it is the only way we're going to make things better, is to just be real. That's
yeah. I love that reality there. And there's something that I loved at the end of the video, Barry and Linda, you kind of turned it from not just the local and the kind of passion and the calling there, but like this imagery, Virginia, you talked about, of turning to the Lord. And I think you even said, I need a source of energy. We need a source of energy. And God, knowing that we have need, but you talked about this image of, or this idea of extraction versus receiving energy. And I love it, Virginia. If you can just share a little bit more about, you know, as you start to talk about green energy and some of these things, sometimes folks just feel too small, or they feel like, you know, I can't go buy a new car or do this or that. So just talk to us a little bit more, Virginia, as you kind of moved, at least in your advocacy, from this idea of extracting things from creation and harming creation versus trusting God to give us what we need when it comes to energy.
right. Well, one of the things that I always saw was in every single, you know, every single meeting that I had, there was always somebody, not just in the meeting, but even on a Facebook post, people would say, well, what can I do to help? What can I do to make it better? I really found that out. And I found out that people want to know, what can they do? And like you said, not everybody can run out and buy an electric car today. And, you know, we can't just supply everybody an electric car. So what can you do? You know, what are some basic things that you can start doing? So we started identifying in our community, what can you do as a homeowner? Well, you can make sure your grass clippings don't go into the stormwater drain, or your leaves don't go into the stormwater drain. You can start thinking about the fact that when you walk your dog out in the yard, if you leave their waste in the yard, when the water hits that's going to go into the stormwater drain, and that stormwater drain, all that water actually flows into the ocean here in Virginia. It actually goes there. So, you know, and helping people see that, you know, here are little things that you can do in your backyard. You can get a rain barrel, and we have different community groups here in Virginia Beach that they will give you a rain barrel. You know, you sign up for it and you don't have to go out and make your own. They'll bring it to you, and they'll do that. And people get excited about that. They start going, oh, I can do that. I can capture my rainwater, and then I can use that to water my lawn instead of, you know, running the sprinkler system or running the water hose. And or I can make a rain garden in my yard. And there are different community groups that'll teach me how to do that. And people really want to do that. They really, really, truly do. They want to help out. And so it's just finding those little things. I just made a Facebook post the other day. The city parks they'll give you a bucket and they'll give you a little grabber, and they'll give you all the tools you need to go out and pick up litter around the city, and they'll give it to you for free. And so it's just like, okay, here's something you can do. Here's different things you can do. And people just jump on that, because they want to help out. And that whole idea of let's share this with each other so that you can do these little things. And these little things, if we're all doing little things, it becomes a big thing.
Yeah. I love that. And I'll just tell you, speaking of little things, and I am going to brag a little bit on my friends Barry and Linda, because many seasons ago, Barry came telling us at EEN, he has this little thing he's doing, this film, and just how this Virginia's calling, and he's been consistent and persistent with it. And so this evening we find ourselves live with over 80 people registered and in here. And you talked, Virginia, about there being little things people can do and just sharing it. So in a second, I'm going to throw back to Barry and Linda about how folks can share Virginia's story. But before I do that, I do just want you all to know there are a couple things, and we didn't get to it tonight because the conversation was so great with Barry and Linda and Virginia. But one of the things that EEN is helping folks with is calling their senators. There's a script here. If you're watching the recording later, or if you're doing it tonight, you can take down the number and just let your senators know that's not political, but that you're a Christian and you care about some of these things we've talked about. You want to see a better climate and healthy, clean jobs. That's there. And we'll send that out by email. But maybe more importantly, what I want to get us to are some next steps. And so I do want to come back to my friends Barry and Linda to talk about how folks can have a deeper dialogue with the film and do this in a non-Zoom setting where they can't get hacked and be there with their folks and their friends from their house of worship or in their neighborhood. So Barry, maybe you can walk us through what it looks like to work with you all on another level here.
Sure, I'm going to ask Linda to help me with this too, but we really envision this film as a tool for people to start conversations with their friends, their neighbors, maybe fellow church members, but people that they trust in their own communities, people who can gather in a living room or in a dorm room or whatever setting is comfortable for folks to gather in, and really use the film as a tool for engaging in really deep conversation, dialogue, reflection, prayer, thinking about what your calling is in your community, how you can do something with people that you trust to build a culture of creation care, really, in your own community. So the film is available for free on our website, virginiascalling.org, not .com. We're a nonprofit, virginiascalling.org. It can be streamed for free, but we're also happy and eager to talk with people about how to create these programs, how to run a dialogue if people feel they need help. I mean, a lot of people, we're delighted if people just gather a group of people together and watch the film and talk about it. We would also love to know about it. We'd love to hear about it. And if people want me or Linda or Virginia to be a part of your event, we're happy to do that too. So it just involves, if you want us to be a part of it, emailing me at barry@virginiascalling.org or Linda at virginiascalling.org, and we can talk about whatever it is that you want to do. Linda, did you have something you might want to add about this?
Yeah, I guess I would just add that we're always, most of us feel overwhelmed and maybe a little inadequate to the task when we're thinking about taking on some big new issue. And it can be really intimidating, and it can seem really big. And it can make us sometimes think, oh, this is just too big a problem. I can't deal with it. I'm gonna go take a nap. And that we don't want that to happen. And we want to reassure you of several things. We really want to reassure everyone that you don't have to go out and change the world. You don't have to go out and solve all the complicated problems of climate change. You just need to do one little thing in your community and make some calls to your senators and your congressional representatives and the people in your state government and the people in your city council, whatever seems to fit the problem that you feel is most important to try to deal with in your community. And so we really and truly and honestly we're so happy to make this personal connection with you tonight. And we want you to know that Barry and I are one email away. Anytime you have any questions, you need some information, you don't know what to do next, email us. Our email is the same as our website. Barry@virginiascalling.org, Linda@virginiascalling.org. The website is virginiascalling.org. You can remember this. We did
They
it.
can remember it, and we will put it in an email to you as well.
Oh,
I love that.
wonderful.
So yeah,
Wonderful. But
Can
we're
I-
happy. We're happy to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what's happening, even if you don't have problems, if everything's going great. We want to know what you're doing in your community, because otherwise we don't know what effect our film is having. So we want to continue a dialogue, and we will be happy to work with you to set up screening events or to set up discussion Zooms. We will have to learn more about security. But we're with you all the way, and you don't have to do this alone. And if you can identify one or two friends.
Yeah, Barry, one last thing
Just wanna-
for you, and then I'll move us to a couple more steps and then close us out. Great.
Yeah, just I just wanted to add a couple things. We have a discussion guide on the website as well, which you might find helpful in talking about the film. But to this larger question of what can I do? One of my heroes, Catherine Hayhoe, evangelical climate scientist, says the most important thing we can all do about climate change is to talk about it. We don't talk about it enough. And when we talk about it, that's part of building engagement, having people reflect, and building, as I say, sort of a culture of caring for God's creation, a culture for taking care of this creation that, as Virginia said in the film, is entrusted to us. So so just having these dialogues with a couple of people, that's an important step in itself. That is an important action in itself.
Yeah. We love that. And for those that want to do more, EEN is going to have a summer of action. We'll send that out in the email. So if you want to start on the path like Virginia into advocacy, but maybe you're not ready to do it on your own yet, you can come do it with us this summer. We'll help you through some of that after you've done the screening in your church or your house of worship or your living room. And then finally become an EEN champion. And that really is the program where you too can go out like Virginia and do this in your unique context. We want to equip you, mobilize you, and activate you to go after what is worth defending to you. That question we started with in that video at the beginning tonight, what's worth defending? So with that, I want to thank Barry and Linda and Virginia for your time. Thank you, Virginia, for your story. Barry and Linda, thank you for putting this together and sharing this labor of love with us. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and pray, and then we will go ahead and end for the evening, and we will see you via email and look forward to you taking one or two or three of these next steps with us. Creator God, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for, as Virginia says in the story, allowing us to turn towards you, Lord, to not put our trust into things that are earthly and temporal, but into eternal things, Lord. When the enemy tries to steal our voice, we respond with prayer and worship and giving you glory. So we thank you for this evening. We thank you for this time where we got to hear Virginia's story. We got to hear from one another and connect internationally and to take ground for your kingdom, Lord. This is your earth. This is your creation, and we are but stewards. And so we steward it with love for you and love for our neighbor. Thank you for this, Lord. Amen. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Take care. Good evening. Bye.